So you're applying to business school for an MBA or any other master's degree, and you don't know whether to take the GMAT or the GRE. That's a very tough decision. So in this video, I'll teach you which exam is better for your specific case, and also give you tons of tips and tricks to go through this whole process very smoothly. One thing I want to ask you before though is if you find this content useful, please subscribe to our channel and hit on that thumbs up button, give us a like, because that will allow us to keep on bringing more content for you, okay? We usually bring a lot of content regarding business school admissions, MBA admissions, GMAT, GRE, and TOEFL exams. So let's start. So what we do know though is the GMAT is let's say the exam of choice for most business schools, okay? The GMAT was made specifically for business school admissions. So historically, most people that were applying to business schools took the GMAT. Now, 20 years ago though, business schools started to also accept the GRE. The GRE wasn't made with the business school applicant in mind. It is way broader. It is for people who want to apply to master's degree and they have usually studied liberal arts. Let's say they want to do masters in psychology, in architecture sometimes masters in sociology, etc., even law, okay? Now it's broader, but most people's schools have started to accept it a couple of decades now. The top business schools, all of them accept the GRE also as a substitute for the GMAT. Now, it's not easy to say which exam is better for you to clear cut say, take the GMAT or the GRE. It's going to depend on some specific cases, and I'm going to outline the cases for you, in which case it would be better to take the GMAT or the GRE. So first of all, let's start by outlining the differences between both exams. Okay, here you have. So the verbal part of the GRE doesn't have a sentence correction section, while the GMAT does. Instead, the GRE has several vocabulary sections, which the GMAT doesn't. This is a typical sentence correction question, for example, you get on the GMAT, and this is a typical vocabulary question you'd get on the GRE. Regarding the quant section, the main difference is that the GMAT is harder, okay? That's a fact. The GMAT is way harder in quant. So the highest scores on the GMAT are off the charts in the GRE. So that's something you do have to know, and that's something that will play a major role in choosing the right exam. One major point you do have to realize though, you have to be aware of this. Most business school applicants will take the GMAT, okay? Because that's a conventional exam. So if you do take the GRE, the outcomes will need to convert the score in order to compare your score to the other pool of applicants, okay? So I believe you're kind of giving them extra work a little bit. Of course, that doesn't matter if you're an outstanding applicant, right? If your resume and your essays are outstanding, there are people like that. But if you are closer to the average, I wouldn't do that because I'm just giving more work to my outcome and I don't think they're gonna really appreciate it, okay? Now, there are conversion tools that easily take your score from the GRE and translate it to the GMAT chart. I'm not a fan of those though. And also, a lot of people say, a lot of outcomes have said that they don't really care whether you take the GMAT or the GRE or whether they have to do a little bit more work to convert your score, but just play it safe, okay? If you're close to the average, I'd rather take the GMAT than the GRE. Now, and this is one of the most important things, one of the most important premises we're going to have to really follow, okay? And this has to do regarding quant, okay? So we said before that the quantitative section in the GMAT is harder, and that's a fact. Now, if you take the GRE and in the quantitative section you get let's say a mid-table score, nothing outstanding, that won't look good because it will look like you avoided the GMAT just because you were gonna be or you were gonna get eaten alive by the exam, okay? So you took the GRE but you still did a poor job, so be really careful with that. If you do take the GRE, you want to get a really high quant score because a really high quant score on the GRE would be a kind of okay-ish score on the GMAT, okay? So just keep that in mind. Now, in order to know which exam is better in your specific case, we need to answer these 4 questions, okay? These 4 questions will tell us which exam is better for us. So the first question, do you really need to ace the exam? You need a really outstanding score. Question number 2, are you applying to a quantitative intensive program like a Master's in Finance or an MBA at Wharton, for example? Number 3, are your quantitative skills better than your English skills? Which section is better, English or quant? And number 4, do you come from a non-quantitative oriented career? Okay, So those are the 4 questions we're going to have to ask. Let's start with the first one. So first we need to determine whether you really need to ace the exam. Now this sounds a little weird, right? But let me explain this. There are some applicants for whom the exam is just a formality, okay? These are outstanding applicants that they will get in business school anyways. For example, there are people with outstanding resumes, with outstanding experience, both academic and work experience. They've been CEOs in their 20s. They've led huge groups of people. They are leading NGOs, they are developing applications, technology, etc. These people are outstanding. Okay, and for them, the exams is just a formality. They will get to business school anyways. I mean, the business schools are always looking for these outstanding people. So not because an exam, okay, the exam doesn't really matter. It's just a formality. So if they get a decent score, decent, not outstanding score in any of the exams, either the GMAT or the GRE, they'll do fine. They'll get in the business school. Okay, they'll get admitted. Now, if you happen to be one of these lucky applicants, I would recommend that you take the GRE instead of the GMAT. Why? Because the GRE has an easier preparation. It will take less time, less effort, less sacrifice. So you could put all that time, that extra time, onto perfecting your essays and your resume, okay, onto the other parts of the application. So just take the GRE because it's easier and just get a decent score and you're in, man. You're in. Question number 2, if you are applying to a quantitative intensive program, like a Master's in Finance and some MBAs, then you need to take the GMAT. Why? Because we've mentioned before, the GMAT is way harder in the quantitative part than the GRE. So here you need to prove to the admissions committee that your quantitative knowledge, proficiency is top of the game. Okay, so there is no way you could prove that by taking the GRE. Even if you get the maximum score, that's not proving anything. Okay, so that just proves that you are okay with quant, you're really good, but not that you are top of the game. So if you want to prove it, you must take the GMAT. Now, to answer the third question, you need to assess your strengths. Okay, whether you are better at verbal or quantitative. Okay, in the case you're better at verbal, like most native speakers or people who have lived and resided a long time in any English-speaking country, then I would say you are better off taking the GRE. Why? Because the GRE has an easier quantitative section, as we've mentioned before, and this will allow you to get a higher overall score. So your score at the end, the overall score, the total score, the global, will be more impressive than if you would take the GMAT. Okay, so by taking the GRE, you're maximizing your chances of impressing the outcomes. On the other hand, if your strengths are more on the quantitative side, like most international students, I would recommend that you take the GMAT. Why? Because of the verbal section. It's not that the GMAT has an easier verbal section than the GRE, but in my years of experience tutoring for the GMAT and the GRE, I've seen that international students could learn the theory for sentence correction faster than learning vocabulary and applying that vocabulary. So the GMAT has a sentence correction section in the verbal section. And then basically, if you don't speak English, you could still manage to deal with it. Okay, you could still deal with these questions because it's more about theory, it's more about memorizing things. So if you put the effort to memorize all these rules, then you're gonna do well in the sentence correction question. That's not so much happening on the vocabulary section because if you don't know the context, that's a little bit more intuitive from the GRE. If you don't know the context, you might not use the right words and you won't get a good score. So if your command of the English language is not too high, then I would say you're better off taking the GMAT because if you put effort, if you are good at memorizing things, you could do better than on the GRE. Okay, question number 4, do you come from a non-quantitative oriented background? Let's say you are a psychologist, sociologist, anthropologist, lawyer, something like that. Most of the time, these people have a really hard time with quant, okay? They suffer a lot in the preparation. So my recommendation for you would be take the GRE. But now, there is a trick here. There's something important we need to know. If you take the GRE, the quantitative section is easier, but you need to ace the exam. You need to get a really high score in quant, okay? Because if you get a mid-level score, let's say you get a 155, right, a so-so score, that's not good because that would only mean that you would have gotten eaten alive by the GMAT. That doesn't look good. So if you want to make it look good, you have to get a really high score on the GRE. Put a lot of effort into your preparation. In that way, what happens is that once you send your application, the business school receives your application, they check it, and they see your high score. It will look like you had an easy time with this. And they will think, oh, this lady or this guy, they had an easy time. If they took the GMAT, they could have gotten even a higher score. They still had a lot of room for improvement, okay? So take the GRE, but make sure to get a really high score. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching. I hope this video helped you decide which exam is better for you. Remember that you first have to analyze what situation you're in right now. Okay, only that way you're gonna get a really optimal and efficient preparation and get the score that you deserve. My name is Rod, I'm with Liberty, and thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. Okay, I'll be talking to you later.